I used to tell myself I was different. That he cheated on other people because they didn't love him the right way, and that if I stayed soft enough, patient enough, he would finally stop. I knew how stupid that sounded, even while I was thinking it, but I believed it anyway. I caught him more than once. Messages, half-deleted photos, names I didn't recognize. Every time I confronted him, there was an excuse. Or tears. Or anger. Sometimes all three. And every time I stayed. Near the end, things stopped being quiet about it. Over the course of 1 week, 2 different women showed up looking for him. One came to our house. Another came to my job while I was working. They weren't subtle. One of them actually smiled when she told me she'd been sleeping with him, like she wanted it to hurt. I remember nodding and pretending I was calm, even though my heart was pounding so hard I felt dizzy. I kept thinking, just get through today. Just survive the embarrassment. Then something strange happened. Our relationship had always been very physical. Multiple times a day wasn't unusual. If I ever said no, it turned into an argument. Suddenly, he wouldn't touch me at all. No sex. No kissing. No casual brushing past me in the hallway. At first, I felt a weird sense of relief. Then confusion. Then fear. It didn't match anything I knew about him. I asked him what was wrong. He said nothing. I asked again. He snapped at me and shut down. A few days later, he calmly asked if I could start sleeping in the guest room. He said he drooled too much and didn't want to bother me. I remember staring at him, waiting for him to laugh. He didn't. I moved my pillow that night without arguing, mostly because I didn't trust myself to speak. That went on for weeks. Almost a month. He stopped going out. He wasn't glued to his phone anymore. He didn't disappear to the bar like he used to. From the outside, it probably looked like he was finally settling down. Inside the house, it felt cold. Quiet in a heavy way. I kept wondering if this was my fault, or if this was what change looked like, or if something else was happening that I couldn't see. One morning, there was loud knocking at the door. Not polite knocking. Urgent, frantic knocking. I opened it and saw a woman I barely knew. She was connected to his friend group, but I'd only met her once or twice. She looked awful. Pale. Shaking. Like she hadn't slept in days. We sat on the porch, and she asked me how bad things were between me and my boyfriend. The way she asked made my stomach drop. I told her the truth. That we didn't sleep together anymore. That he wouldn't touch me. That I didn't know why. I said it like it was just another weird phase, even though my hands were trembling as I spoke. She went quiet. Then her breathing sped up. Then she started crying. She pulled out her phone and called her boyfriend, and suddenly she was screaming into it, saying I probably had it too. I remember leaning forward, my ears ringing, asking over and over what she meant. She kept crying into the phone while I just sat there, frozen. I remember thinking this couldn't be about me. There was no way. I hadn't done anything wrong. I hadn't gone anywhere. I hadn't touched anyone but him. I kept saying her name, asking her to slow down, asking what she was talking about. My voice sounded far away, even to me. When she finally looked at me, her eyes were red and glassy. She said my name and then stopped, like she didn't know how to say the next part out loud. That's when she told me the women who had been showing up that week weren't just random girls he cheated with. They were supplying him with drugs. Hard drugs. And they weren't careful people. One of them was sick. She said it quietly, like whispering it would make it less real. That night, my ex, his best friend's brother, and that brother's girlfriend were all together with those women. They were using the same utensils. The same glasses. There was sex. She said she didn't even know exactly who slept with who because everything was messy and blurred and no one was sober enough to remember clearly. All of them got hepatitis. I felt my stomach flip. My mouth went dry. I remember gripping the edge of the porch so hard my fingers hurt. She told me the women were looking for him because he owed them money. And because they wanted to tell him what he'd been exposed to. That was why they kept showing up. That was why he'd suddenly disappeared from his usual places. That was why he stopped touching me. It all clicked at once, and I felt stupid for not seeing it sooner. The distance. The guest room. The silence. He wasn't changing. He was hiding. Protecting himself. And accidentally protecting me in the process. I didn't wait for her to finish explaining. I don't even remember standing up. I just remember being inside my car, hands shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. I drove straight to get tested. I didn't go home. I didn't call him. I didn't stop to think. I just kept driving, replaying every moment I'd ever doubted myself for staying. Sitting in that clinic felt like punishment. The lights were too bright. Every sound felt sharp. I filled out forms with sweaty hands, answering questions I never thought I'd have to answer. When they asked about exposure, my throat closed up. I kept thinking about how close I came to ruining my own life for someone who couldn't even be honest. The waiting was the worst part. Every hour felt stretched. I barely slept. When the results finally came back and the nurse told me I was okay, I broke down in a way I didn't know was possible. I cried from relief. From anger. From exhaustion. I was vaccinated from a previous job, and that one fact saved me. Later, I found out the woman who had hepatitis knew she had it. She didn't tell anyone. She kept sleeping with people anyway. When that came out, everything exploded. Friendships ended. People blamed each other. No one wanted to take responsibility. Not long after, she died from an overdose. When I heard, I didn't know how to feel. I just sat there, staring at the wall, thinking about how close I came to being another quiet casualty of someone else's recklessness. After everything came out, I didn't confront him right away. That part surprises people when I tell them. They expect yelling or throwing things or some big moment. I didn't have that in me. I went back to the house and moved through the rooms like I was already a ghost there. I slept in the guest room like I had been, staring at the ceiling, listening to him move around on the other side of the wall. Knowing what I knew now made every sound feel heavier. When he finally noticed something was different, he asked what was wrong. His voice was flat, careful. I told him I knew. I didn't list details. I didn't need to. His face changed instantly. Not guilt. Not fear. Just this quiet calculation, like he was deciding how much of the truth I already had. He admitted enough to make it seem like honesty, but not enough to take responsibility. He said he hadn't touched me to protect me, like I was supposed to be grateful. That hurt more than I expected. The idea that my safety was an accident. A side effect of his panic. Not love. Not concern. Just fear of consequences. The house felt unbearable after that. Every surface felt contaminated, even though I knew logically I was fine. I washed everything anyway. Sheets. Towels. Dishes. I wiped down counters at 3 in the morning because I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the times I had ignored my instincts. The times I felt uncomfortable and talked myself out of it. I blamed myself in quiet ways, the kind that don't show on the outside, but eat at you slowly. People around me started finding out pieces of the story. Not the full thing. Just enough to ask questions. Some of them looked at me with pity. Others with judgment. Like I had chosen this. Like staying meant I deserved whatever almost happened to me. I stopped explaining. I didn't have the energy to defend my past self anymore. He tried to act normal. Made food. Watched TV. Asked mundane questions. It was surreal. Like we were pretending the floor hadn't just collapsed under us. One night, he said we should move forward and not tell anyone else. That was the moment something finally went quiet inside me. Not loud anger. Just clarity. I realized I didn't feel safe with him anymore. Not emotionally. Not physically. Not in any way that mattered. Leaving wasn't dramatic either. I packed when he wasn't home. A few bags. Important papers. Clothes I actually liked. I remember standing in the doorway for a second before I left, looking at the space where I had begged myself to believe things would get better. Then I closed the door. Even after I was gone, the fear lingered. Every ache made my chest tighten. Every unknown number made my heart race. I went back for follow-up tests even when I didn't need to, just for peace of mind. Trauma doesn't disappear just because you escaped the worst outcome. Some nights, I still think about how close it all was. One different decision. One more night in the same bed. One more time forgiving him. It makes my hands shake if I think about it too long. So I don't, not anymore. It took a long time for my body to catch up with what my mind already knew. Even after I was gone, I stayed tense all the time. My shoulders were always tight. I slept lightly, waking up at small noises. I didn't miss him, but I missed the version of myself I was before everything felt dangerous. I kept replaying moments, not because I wanted answers, but because my brain was trying to understand how something could rot so quietly. Every now and then, I'd remember that month when he stopped touching me. How confused I was. How I wondered if I wasn't attractive anymore, or if I had done something wrong. It makes me sick now to think about how I blamed myself instead of trusting that something was off. I didn't know I was living inside the fallout of choices I never agreed to be part of. I heard bits and pieces afterward. About the friends turning on each other. About who knew what and when. About money that was never paid back. I stayed away from all of it. I didn't want closure. I didn't want explanations. I just wanted distance. Silence felt safer than answers. When I found out the woman who had been sick had died, it hit me in a strange way. Not sadness exactly. More like a cold realization of how reckless everything had been. How close all of us were to becoming stories people whispered about instead of people who kept living. I sat alone that night, thinking about how easily things can spiral when no one cares enough to stop. I don't talk about this part of my life much. Not because I'm ashamed anymore, but because it's hard to explain how someone can love and tolerate and ignore until one day they're standing in a clinic, wondering if their entire future just ended. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly. In small compromises. In moments you convince yourself don't matter. I'm quieter now. More careful. I trust myself more than I trust anyone else. And sometimes, when I'm alone in my own space, I feel grateful in a way that's hard to describe. Not happy about what happened. Just grateful that I got out with my health, my sanity, and the chance to start over without carrying his secrets in my body.